today's panelists, we have a wonderful cross-section representing the different facets of today's modern media and a robust list of questions that have been prepared for them today. We will be spending about 10 minutes near the end of today's presentation to take questions from the audience, and each of our guests will be able to stay around a little while after today's presentation. If you don't get your question answered from the floor, you can come up and ask them one-on-one, okay? So there will be a Q&A near the end of today. So all the way down at the end of the table, weighing in at... No, we're not going to talk about that. Different introduction. I'd like to welcome Guy Fletcher, who's the editor-in-chief of Frederick Magazine. Guy's a native of Baltimore and was raised in Anne Arundel County. He studied journalism at the University of Maryland, College Park, before beginning a career as a... Okay, one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Before beginning a career as a newspaper reporter with the Hagerstown Herald-Mail. He stayed there for about 10 years, covering beats such as school and city, county, and state government, earning numerous awards from the Maryland, Delaware, D.C. Press Association. For the past 10 years, Guy has been the editor-in-chief at Frederick Magazine, overseeing the content of the monthly publication. Fun fact, Guy is a word nerd. And there is, of course, nothing more fun than that. To Guy's immediate right, we welcome Dianah Gibson, news director at WFMD and WFRE Radio here in Frederick. She works on both morning shows, delivering the news to thousands of listeners in the region. Her news department has won numerous awards from the Chesapeake Broadcasters Association, including Outstanding News Operations of the Year. Dianah has worked in radio and TV in several different markets, including Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Virginia Beach. She has also appeared in several movies and numerous commercials. Fun fact, Dianah is absolutely a Frederick County native. Graduated from Middletown High School. After graduation, attended FCC, went to Towson, go Tigers. And because that wasn't enough, she also has a broadcast meteorologist education. Welcome, Dianah. Andy Wyatt is our next guest, Vice President and General Manager of Nexstar Media, WDVM in Hagerstown. Andrew, if he's in trouble, has extensive executive broadcast experience in television markets throughout the country, with expertise in station and sales management, client and revenue development, and local programming and content creation across multiple media platforms. Andy has most recently served as Vice President and General Manager at a Fox affiliate in Augusta, Georgia. During his tenure, he spearheaded the launch of the station's news programming, managing all aspects of local branding and talent recruitment. Prior to Augusta, he served as Vice President and General Manager of a CBS affiliate in Yuma, Arizona. And he began his broadcasting career in Roswell, New Mexico, I believe. Thank you, Andy. If you like the introductions, just wait till they get a chance to talk. Kim Dow is our next guest. Kim is owner and creative director of Sass Studios. It's a graphic design and branding studio here in Frederick, Maryland that works in a wide range of associations, publications, and with small businesses. Kim is an entrepreneur at heart. She's launched Sass Magazine, a quarterly women's lifestyle and professional print magazine in the Frederick, Maryland, and surrounding regions, as well as sassmagazine.com, which is the online lifestyle resource serving women nationwide. Because that wasn't enough, Kim decided she would launch Everyday Dog Magazine, which is an online resource for modern-day dog lovers. She serves as the owner, publisher, and creative director for both publications. Fun fact about Kim, she co-founded and was past artistic director of Equinox Dance Company, which is an all-adult modern dance troupe, and she loves hot French fries. Thank you, Kim. And to my immediate left, please welcome Geordie Wilson, publisher of the Frederick News Post. Geordie moved to Frederick with his family 7.5 years ago to become publisher of the News Post. He had previously been in New Hampshire, where he grew up, and where he was then working as publisher of the Concord Monitor. Before that, he worked as a writer for the Seattle Times and had a stint at Microsoft and other software companies. As a journalist, Geordie has worked as a reporter, an editor, a publisher, and a website developer. There's really not much inside a newspaper operation that he hasn't done, including writing stories and editorials, laying out pages, selling and building ads, helping run a press, and delivering papers from time to time when it was absolutely needed. As a native of New Hampshire, he loves to play hockey on frozen ponds. He does play adult hockey here in Frederick, and his wife last week told me he won the Adult Rookie of the Year award. One of the assumptions that I think many people have when it comes to getting noticed by the news media is that regardless of whether they're with a for-profit, a non-profit, or a government agency, if I send out a press release, the media is obligated in some fashion to pick it up.
That is not true.
Right.
Ding, ding, ding.
There we go. So why don't we start there? And by that, Guy, I mean that's kind of a soft introduction to a very high level, because we're on a limited time today, history of media.
First Gutenberg invented the press.
There we go. Keep going.
No, to answer your question, first of all, I got to just say one thing. There's a difference between a print right person and a broadcaster. We were given a advanced copy of all these questions, and Dianah went through the real detail. So if you look at mine, so that's the difference.
You like the words.
Yes, I did like. But anyway, no, we're not obligated. We are looking at every press release on its own and subjecting it to whether or not it works for our readership. And every publication, every outlet has a different type of readership, and it may work for one, it may not work for others. In some cases, it may work for us at this time and not another. So, no, we're not obligated to run them, but trust me, I do look at them.
I do look at them. I say the same thing about the dirty dishes. Oh, I look at them. I know they're there.
I know they're there.
I just don't care that much. So what makes us care? Andy, let me come to you here. What makes us care about press releases? And by us, I mean, like right now I'm standing on the media side, right? What makes the media care about press releases? What makes them compelling and something that you think you're going to pick up?
All right, it's going to sound bad, but sometimes it just makes it easy to get a newscast put together, right? Because if it lands in your lap and it's a story ready to go and it's appropriate, it makes sense for my audience and the area that we serve, then, boy, you just made our job easier for us. So I think, I'd like to say that every news story that we put on is sleuthed out and investigated and things like that, but there's really a sense of that. At a TV station like ours, we produce 52 hours of news per week, and you have half-hour and hour-long shows that you have to fill with content. So if it's something that I can turn pretty quick, in addition to the investigative piece that I'm working on as a reporter, then it might be something that would be very appropriate for us to turn into a story. In our situation too, I want to add to what Kai just said. We may not look at them all, and that's another thing too. Is in our situation, we are part of the Washington D.C. television market. So there's 2.4 million people out there, and we get an amazing amount of inbound traffic to the TV station. So I would, my suggestion on that would be trying to make contact with other people at the station, and it doesn't hurt if you think it's a TV story that you really want to get done, then I would try to find another person that you know and say, hey, would you mind walking this into the news department for me? Because that's usually one thing that will really move it to the top.
We're going to talk more about press releases as a specific technique and tactic to get your business covered or nonprofit covered a little bit more. But I kind of wanted to break the ice with that one because I think that sets the stage for understanding what your job is, our job as a business owner is, to make the media's job a little easier, right? If you come and you persist with a perspective that they're obligated in some way, you will never win at this game. So I had to eliminate that right away, right? On the panel today, we have 3 people who are working in a daily news cycle and 2 people that are working on a much longer news cycle. The print has a longer one, and so press releases are played a little bit differently. And again, I'll dive into some of the tactics there a little bit later. But everybody okay with the? Did I disappoint anyone? Did I just blow anyone's mind that they're not obligated? A few. Okay, that's okay. But I'm glad we started there. Let's take a zoom out from press releases as a specific way to get some coverage. And Geordie, maybe you can start us off with this one, and then I'll go down to Kim, because we have daily print, non-daily print, and still some very specific target audiences to keep in mind. So can you start us off, Geordie, with a piece of practical advice that you would give someone starting out about promoting their business in any way? And this could be unpaid or paid.
Well, I'll talk about how you can work most effectively with us. That's obviously a broad topic. You can go lots of different ways to promote your business. But I think my best advice in how you can work most effectively with us as a daily newspaper is to do your homework and make sure you know a little bit about the paper. If you don't read it regularly, pick it up, look at it, look through it. Look for the different elements of it that might be appropriate to tell parts of your story. And so do your homework, be respectful, learn a little bit about who the reporters are or who the editors are that you might want to reach out to, and be human. We're humans too, and we respond to phone calls and being treated like professionals. So I think it's pretty, it's pretty basic. We're simple people. We like new information. We want to serve our readers, and if you can understand that, where those things connect, where that overlap is between how we understand the needs and wants of our audience and what you want, then it'll work fine.
Kim, what would you add to that?
I would definitely second what you said. Know who you're talking to. Really do your research on what that media outlet is. For instance, for us, we are a quarterly publication, so we're not looking for press releases about an event that might be coming up after one of our issues is already out. What we're looking for are personal stories. So you really have to do your research and kind of know what the media outlet is looking for, what kind of stories they run, and also why is that important to us to run your story? How will that benefit our readers? Will our readers enjoy that? So my biggest word of advice is just do your research, and also to follow up with that, follow up with us as well, because we do get a lot of press releases throughout the days, throughout the week. Don't hound us, but if we don't get back to you the first time, then just a quick phone call or a follow-up email, because sometimes there's a lot that comes through.
Dianah, coming to you next. As a former radio nerd myself, I clearly remember grabbing something off whatever, I won't even talk about the olden days. You grab something off the ticker, and 30 seconds later it could be on the air. There's shy of the internet, radio is the most immediate traditional form of media. And you have 2 stations that you need to feed information out to, and it's rapidly developing. And so I must imagine that the noise, if you will, coming from all sorts of different sources of what do I pick and choose, has got to be even more focused in a facility like yours. How do you pick and choose? What are some insider tips, if you will, if you have any, about how people in the community can get good news spread or events spread or that upcoming 5K announced on the community bulletin board, anything like that? What is it that we're forgetting that you really wish we knew?
Well, I do think that press releases are good, and I would like to say call into the radio station, but that is the hardest thing to do, for people to call in and say, I have this story to pitch to you, I have this idea. Send in an email, and then you have got to capture me, because like everybody else up here, I get so many emails with press releases. I don't have time to read through all of them because our news department is a little bit smaller. So when I see something coming into my email or the news email, the first thing that I'm looking for is who does it come from and what is that subject line? And quite honestly, if I'm not hitting it in either one of those, I have to hit delete because we do news. We do things that are going to affect your family, affect your community, and that's really what we focus on. On WFRE, it's more female-based. On WFND, it is more male-based. But we do news like, others 24/7. So find out what your business does, what your nonprofit does that's going to affect the community, affect your family, and send us a press release. But have something on the subject line that's going to capture my eye. And then I'm going to open up your email and really the title of your email, and I've got to get those bullet points out in that first paragraph. But I've got to know that it's going to not just be a commercial for your business, but it's going to be something that it's going to be for the greater good. Like if somebody works for a biomedical company and they're working on something for like a flu vaccine and it's in June and you think, hey, listen, we have this really good match for the flu vaccine. I have somebody here who's working on it. Send us a press release maybe in June, because maybe in August or September, because this is a press release for the greater good, we're going to be picking up on that and we may even call you for an interview. So press releases are good, but catch me right out the gate.
So a subject line that says press release for February 25th, not really compelling.
Coming up,
You're smiling because you've seen that subject line.
you could say something like an event to save dogs in need taking place on February 25th. You know what I mean? Put out the date, but also put out something and put it in such a way where I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I want to help these shelter dogs. Or, you know what I mean? This kid, there's an event for a family that's raising money for a cancer victim. So do something like that. Get me right out of the gate.
Audience, raise your hand if you know what the inverted pyramid is. Panelists, raise your hand if you wish they knew what the inverted pyramid was. Who would like to summarize an inverted pyramid? Because this still has value, right? In writing for news?
Just put the important stuff at the top. Because nobody gets to the bottom. TLDR.
Don't bury the lead.
TLDR?
Too long didn't read.
She can be taught.
Okay, good, thank you. I got that one. Good. Yeah, the inverted pyramid says, if you think of an upside down pyramid, your most important information, the who, what, where, when, comes first, and then decreasing levels of detail come later in it, so that if they have to cut it at some point, all of the important details have already been captured in the first paragraph or two. I know when I used to filter press releases, it would get missed all the time. And I think so much about website design these days, where they say, use your headline, keep it very short, keep it very brief, and don't make the reader, in this case the media, work too hard for it. If they have to work too hard for it and hunt out the information, they're hitting delete and they're on to the next thing, right? So if that hasn't been made obvious to you so far yet today, I hope that is, because our job as business owners is to make their job as media moguls as easy as possible. Not because they're dumb, because they're busy, and you want to stand out. Okay. Speaking of websites and online social media, are there any among you that you personally or someone on your team is sort of listening to what's happening on social media as a way to get ideas for your own coverage? And if so, how is it that you manage that? Kim, I saw you nod.
Well, we use our social media in a little bit different way. We actually use our social media channels to ask for certain stories or sources, or we're looking at doing this, we want to find more information about it. So we use it that way.
But you're monitoring a conversation you started.
We monitor that, and then of course, we're a women's lifestyle, so we're monitoring all of anything that has to do with women's lifestyle, whether it's a hashtag or whether it's a story or an initiative that has to do with women. We will start to monitor all of that, and if something comes through that piques our interest, that we can tie into our more local and regional audience, then that's how we do it. So we do. I mean, we monitor it, but we don't have somebody like every day, looking at every single thing that comes through.
Okay. Anyone else use it differently or in the same way?
We have a full-time, multiple full-time people that their job is to post information to our website and post information to our social media. And we use that frequently. We'll look at the insights and see, all right, well, this is kind of something that the market cares about. And they would watch our TV station if we put that on a TV show in addition to having it available on the social media. So we'll definitely have
Okay, I'm sorry, Andy,
conversations about it.
I'm not quite
So
following.
if we post a Facebook story, and it does phenomenally well off the charts, there's a good chance that that'll be attractive to a viewer on television too.
Okay.
On our television side and in our website as well too. So we may use that, we're constantly monitoring what kind of stories and can we put this into a bucket of types of content that we need to be focused on for the market that we're serving.
Okay, so let me press on that for a second. Strategically then, if I'm a business owner who feels like I'm a subject matter expert on whatever story you have just posted on your Facebook page, right? Is it appropriate for me then to comment on it and to provide a quote that you might pick up or to offer myself as a subject matter expert if you wanted to further explore this, or is that bad etiquette?
I wish it would have happened before we started the story.
Well, I didn't know you were going to run the story then, Andy.
Because that's what we're looking for, the content. No, I think that would be appropriate. I mean, why not? If you're into that, shoot an email to the news director or try to make contact with the TV station in some way, because it depends on the type of story it is. But if it's a story that we're going to do follow-ups on, then by all means we would like to have another expert perhaps into the mix.
Kai, you're down there nodding your head.
Well, it's interesting because every now and then you'll see those kind of comments and they'll say, and you say, well, exactly what Andy said. I wish you would have contacted me before we did the story, but it is nice to know that that person is out there and is a subject matter expert. The other side of that is, we're putting stories out there all the time. People do respond, and it helps us, like Andy said, get us a good feel on the analytics of what people are responding well to. We know there's certain types of stories when we put them in the magazine, they're going to do very well. And a lot of that is driven by what we're seeing on our social heading back to our website.
So your social almost becomes your testing grounds
Sure.
for the larger exposure. All right, so then back it up a step. If both of you agree, and others on the panel may also agree, gosh, I wish I'd known you before I wrote the story, how do we get known to you before you publish the story, in whatever manner it comes out? Besides playing hockey with you.
It may be a little different with a magazine because those come out a little bit less frequently. But our stories don't come entirely out of the blue. Our reporters are mining a topic area and they'll write a number of stories related to it. So I think once you see a story that's kind of in your ballpark, where you feel like, oh, well, this is something I can contribute to the discussion on that, that's really the point we were talking about, where you reach out and try to get to know, establish a connection, begin a conversation, and really it's best done with the reporter. I mean, they're the ones who are the kind of internal subject experts or what have you. So CJ Fairfield, doing business stories, you should know that if you're a reader, if you're interested in being present in the News Post, then you reach out and begin that dialogue. And so that you're not going to get the first one. You missed it. That's too bad. Life goes on. There's many more stories to come, and I think you just want to get yourself involved at that point. So again, be human. Reach out. Converse.
Has everyone written an action item down from this portion of the discussion?
I also would add, with magazines that aren't coming out, every day, daily, Guy and I, we all have editorial calendars, so you can look to see what kinds of topics we're going to be writing about throughout the year. And if you are a source for that, then take a look, again, going back to do your research to see what it is that we're kind of looking for. And that might be a great way to get your foot in the door as a source.
Where would we find a content calendar, and how far in advance would you like to be? Because again, for print deadlines, it's often way sooner than people would expect.
People ask us for ours. I email it to them. We frequently update it and change it because you can't just keep running the same thing every 12 months.
Sure.
But I gladly provide it way ahead of time. Sort of picking up on what Kim said, though, that we do, being in a magazine that works many, many months in advance. We are a daily magazine, but we don't have the luxury of doing one magazine a month. We're working on 4 or 5 at a time. And Nancy, my assistant editor, is out there, and she knows that just today I signed the story for July. So we love that way out front thinking. Yeah.
So that's almost 5 months.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, good.
I would add one other thing. Like a newspaper, we have people that are specialized. Ours are more geographic, the way we've set it up. So for the Frederick area, I think we have our I-270 office. Katie Mizuraka is one of our people. If you can strike up just an email conversation. Her email is linked on there, and you know if she covers news in this area, or if you've watched the news, start doing that. And I'm a proponent at the TV station side, and I always encourage my news directors to have a reverse media day with people. You know, if there's a company that we really ought to be covering a lot of, and your company may not be that, but if you're a big company for sure, you know, we're really tuned into that, then we should have a place where they come in, because it's about the relationship with the people that are writing these stories or creating these stories. The more you have that, I mean, then you have some trust, and then we know this is going to be a legit story. Because every now and then we get an email or a press release from a kook, right? Or a Facebook comment from a
Is
kook.
that the industry term?
It is
From-
In my place it is.
Yes. That's with air quotes around it. Cook. A Russian hacker, I don't know.
It was always more charming when they came in scrawled crayon letters.
Oh, the good old days. Am I right? Yeah.
Have a folder.
Called those days Thursdays. Moving on. Thanks, Ellen.
Sorry.
We touched on press releases. We've touched on story pitches. But again, I can't assume everyone knows the difference between them, how they function differently, and how they can approach the media differently with them. So who would like to share some vocabulary on the difference between pitching a story and sending a press release?
Well, I've had people pitch stories by physically calling, and there's nothing wrong with calling, but if you're gonna pitch me on a story that you want coverage of, it's gonna be difficult in my newsroom, because we're a newsroom, we're 24/7. I'm looking for the story that leads, that bleeds. So it's best to send a press release where I can kind of read over it and dissect it and think, is it right for our listeners? Is it not right? So when you pitch something, it's, hey, I got this idea, you know, there's this dog walk that's taking place, what do you think about it? And then as opposed to sending a press release where you send me the information. And then by all means, call us if there's a news story taking place, or if you have an opinion about something that's taking place in the news. Like, we have a lot of business owners here, people who work in small businesses, and with the minimum wage going up possibly to $15 an hour, that's going to affect a lot of businesses. So if you want to write up a press release saying, you know, local business owner on North Market Street is not going to be able to survive if the minimum wage goes up to $15 an hour, something like that is going to be a great pitch/press release, send it on off. And then by doing that, you are becoming part of the conversation, you're putting yourself into the news, and you're promoting your business as well.
And Kim had said, and follow up, because we're so busy. So what sort of follow-up would you find helpful? And where does it tip into, all right, you're just being an a-hole?
Email. Email is the best follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is the PG-13 audience, right? Okay. Email is the best follow-up. You want one
Yeah.
follow-up, you want three. Seriously, where does it tip?
Just follow up once.
Once. Okay. About 4 days later.
2 days later, maybe.
2 days later. Okay. I'm trying to get down to the brass tacks for you, because I want you to be as successful as possible. Okay? So when you have an opportunity to say, no, really, Dianah, how do you want it? Buttered on both sides? Oh, just one? Okay, great. We'll grill that right up. Why not? Right? Would most of you agree of one follow-up about 2 days later feels okay and not intrusive? Yes. Okay.
I'm really not qualified.
Andy's just
I
making
would
promises on
call
behalf
my
of the
news
staff.
director and ask him that.
It's all good. It's all good. Who's got an example? Because I think so often we learn best from examples. Who's got an example of a press release or a story pitch that you loved and can kind of debrief us on why it was such a home run for you and your organization?
Well, I have one that
Go ahead.
I was thinking about when you sent that question along ahead of time. It was Brian Gaudet, and he's with, I can never remember the full title.
Patel, BNBI.
NBAC, what is
It's up to all
And
letters.
the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasure Center, NBACC at Fort Detrick. And now he's somebody I know a little bit in town, and when the funding for that was threatened a couple of years ago, you know, I mean, obviously this is his job, he's a professional at this, at communications, but it was textbook, right? He called me really quickly just to alert me that he was going to be sending, you know, told me what it was, and he was going to be sending a press release or a brief or an alert on the facts of that. And, you know, he gets right to the point. I knew exactly what the impact was going to be or could potentially be for Frederick and Wyatt was news. And then that was followed up with a press release that sort of provided all the important core information, also pointed me to, you know, who and how I could get more information, who I could talk to, and how we could talk to them to get more information. It was, I mean, that was excellent. You know, and that came like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you know, we were able to jump on it and get a story, front page leading story for the next day. So he understood the deadline cycle. He knew that for that story, that late, he had to reach out directly to me, which was appropriate for that, which would not be appropriate for every story.
And did he have a pre-existing relationship with you?
Yeah, you know, just you know, around town, and I'm on a chamber board, and yeah, so he knew me enough to do that, and that's why I think it is that conversation, you know, that if you're an institution or a business in town that is going to interface with the press commonly or occasionally anyway, it's worth getting to know us, because then you can, when you need it, you can call it, and that's really makes the difference. So that was the best example I had when it was just textbook, worked perfectly.
Great. Anyone else have one springs to mind? Okay, thanks for doing your homework.
I know I'll tell you the questions ahead of time, right?
I mean, there are companies that are, you know, launching something new or having a new initiative or a really super important initiative that they'll put enough funds together to create something extremely elaborate too, like where they'll bring a box of things over and they'll come make a delivery to the television station and arrange something with the news department of, hey, we really want to come in and actually do a presentation of some sort. And I've seen that, and I think sometimes that works. Sometimes it's just a commercial, and that usually doesn't work. If you come to the news department to do a commercial for your business, that's probably not going to do it. You have to dress it up as something that has some meat and some information to disseminate that is news, not just
Well, Andy, you mentioned
commercial
that a
piece.
good way to start the relationship building is to attend a media event. But in the absence of a media event coming up, would it be appropriate for me to come by with an appointment just to introduce myself?
Absolutely.
Okay, so not a huge pitch and you don't have to do all that, but hi, it's me. I understand you're in charge of reporting on my line of work or my nonprofit or my region, and I wanted to introduce myself, maybe talk about the content calendar that's coming up. What stories are you brewing on? Is there a way that I can help with those? All of that would be within proper etiquette, is that right? I don't see you writing.
Or even at the least, just an email introduction. I mean, if you can't come by, even just an email that's not a pitch, not a press release, but just to say, hey, I'm so and so. I love your newspaper, or I love your magazine. And you know, just to introduce yourself that way. I mean, I think that I would remember that the next time when you send me something.
Even in like real mail, like U.S. mail, remember that?
What?
Don't want that.
You don't want that.
No, I don't want that.
Why did you want that?
Please don't do that. What? And I don't do real mail.
You don't do real mail? Don't you have somebody that does real mail for you?
Yeah, right.
I have so many more questions right now, but we're just... Mine is working. Okay. Dianah mentioned that a sharp subject line, if you're sending email, is important to getting attention. Talk to me for a moment about what else grabs your attention. Do you, for example, want me to submit photos or video or testimonials or a list of people you can interview? At what point, again, am I being annoying, and at what point am I being helpful, and how do I know the difference?
Yes, to all the above.
All of the above.
Yes, to all the above.
So even as a radio station, you're interested in visuals?
Oh, yeah, we love our social media. I mean, because we have people who work on social media, and we love likes and shares. I feel like a millennial. I feel like my kids. But truly, if we're when we put a news story out there, it goes automatically to Facebook, and we tweet about it too, and we know it's a good story if we're getting the likes and shares, and we're getting, some responses on that. But also for us, we found that, again, what affects your family, your community, those are the stories that really are the ones that we're going to be following. It's not always if it leads, it bleeds. And we did a story within the last year. It was for a nonprofit. It was for an MS walk. And somebody came up and pitched me the story, but they pitched me the story saying, I've got these 3 girls who will come in and talk to you about it because their mom has MS. And all of a sudden, it took on a whole nother attitude, realm, and it was just the most emotional interview I had ever done. By the time we were all done, we were crying. But it was so good, and I will tell you, that nonprofit, they did raise a lot of money, but they got a lot of airplay because it affected a family, it affected a community. So that's what we're looking for.
The word I so often hear attached to efforts like that is that you're humanizing that, in this case, MS. You're humanizing a topic. What are some other ways that as submitters, we could humanize what it is that we're doing and make it seem like it's really relevant?
One area, Dianah talked about the hypothetical about the increase in the minimum wage and how it may affect a business owner.
Right.
And we all send out press releases and pitches from our own perspective. And that's fine. I worked in PR for 8 years. I know exactly what's going on. But your message will be much more effective if you put it in the perspective of a real trend in the world, that something bigger is going on just in my business. The minimum wage would be a great example. If someone sent in a press release and said, I think this is going to be the worst thing, not just for me, but for all the business owners along, So my message I would love to get across to people is, yes, promote your business all day long, but also try to think of the bigger picture sometimes. Well, we love that kind of stuff.
Well, I know that the Chamber, for example, put out a position statement, if you will, on the $15 an hour minimum wage. I know that Monica Pierce is in charge of the Distillers Association in Maryland. So on behalf of the Distillers Association, that might be another example of where, okay, she's got a personal opinion, but also as a representative of that association, now the voice is bigger. Or Chris Kennedy from the Advertising Federation. That's what you're talking about?
Yes, and the distillers are a great example. They really have gotten the groupthink way out there. The brewers still, they're outstanding in that regard.
Yeah, so send the press releases and the pictures, even if you have videos too. We love that. It all gets used.
I like what you said about they had already arranged an interview for you too.
Yeah.
They had 3 people that weren't really associated. I mean they were, but so I'm thinking if you're a business and you actually have someone who is not from your business, that you could arrange the interviews, because the hard part in putting a story together, especially for TV, I mean, the newspaper can get away maybe with doing some phone interview stuff sometimes, but we really like to have a face on the TV. So being able to schedule and set up interviews is one of the big difficult things that the TV reporter has to go through to try to find these people. So if you can have people available at a moment's notice, that would be fantastic. And that would make it easier for them to get the story.
Annie, I'm going to stick with you for a minute for this next one. Thank you, Dianah, for mentioning that even for a radio station, we have a social media presence. That's very visual, so don't forget that. That still is relevant to us. And for television, the video is what happens. How can we put together a video press release, if that's appropriate, in a way that would give you some material to use if you couldn't get crew to a particular location?
Call the station and ask my news director the best way to do that.
Okay.
I'm thinking that we don't do that a lot. Normally, if it's worth covering, we're going to send a crew out there. If you have footage, like for the events, now that is one thing that would be an exception, I would say. So if you have an event and you have footage from last year's event that you can provide to us because we weren't there last year, that would be something that makes it a TV story to have. to be a TV story, I can't just do a reader with a logo and say, hey, coming up is going to be the big Farmers Showdown tractor pull thing or whatever it's going to be. It just doesn't have the same effect as mud flying and tractor tires blowing up and stuff like that, right? So if we've got stuff like that make it really interesting visually, that's what the TV guys are really looking for, are really, really visual, eye-grabbing things that will make a TV broadcast look better. So there are ways that you can share it to a Dropbox or drop certain pieces of video in. If you've got things like that, that can be great.
I see all the time where major news outlets are pulling video from YouTube. Part of it drives me bananas. Part of me recognizes this is what's needed. So is this another intersection of where social media and traditional media come together? That if you were on site for when such and such happened, one of our clients, for example, is Kentucky Wildlife Preserve in Thurmont. When they've got a baby something born, they're not announcing that and scheduling that with your news crew in advance. But if the crew there has video footage and could provide it through their YouTube channel or their Dropbox, from time to time they've had that get picked up because it's kind of compelling stuff. So that's the sort of example that I'm thinking of. Is it okay to share a YouTube video as part of the email that is sent out to say this just happened, or this is about to happen, or this is what happened last year? Is that okay, or do you really just kind of throw open your mouth a little bit when that happens?
Because, especially for TV people, hey, they watch TV. They understand how that medium works, and they're attracted to it for some reason or another. So if you're telling the story and it's click a video, and that's where social media is moving to a lot too, right? So there's more and more video content, and a lot of these people are millennial, younger people that are actually producing these stories nowadays. So if that's the best message to reach to them, the best way to communicate to them, use their own language, right?
Just leave the Instagram filters off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, YouTube is nice, and you can get some good stories. I mean, good example is baby calf being born in South Mountain Creamery. Pull something off of that. A news story is those YouTube videos of the Daddy-O-5. So we do in our newsroom, we will go to YouTube. We see something on Facebook, we will go to social media and things like that to grab audio for stories.
Can we, as a business owner or somebody associated with a nonprofit, can we tag you in a post to help draw your attention to that?
That's a good question. I would refer that one to my program director. I mean, it all depends. I honestly don't know if you can do that on our Facebook. I think you could post it below a comment. You may be able to tag us in a tweet.
Local TVM, yeah, I think that might get somebody's attention in there.
See, I'm trying
I'm
to
not
find
sure.
all the little seams for
I
it.
don't recall another board meeting where they said, "Oh, this just came in," but
Yeah, I get, and if it didn't work,
you
they
could
would probably take it down.
You can include it in the email you want.
There you go.
And I think
would
that
be
goes
good.
back to doing your research to see what are the different ways. Like we were just saying, you can tag both of ours in social media. So it's just doing your research and kind of figuring out how not every media outlet is the same. So you can't just send out a blanket press release everywhere and expect to get the same coverage and the same response everywhere.
And know your audience.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, my grandma would say, don't wait till you're thirsty to start digging the well. Don't wait till you have news to start building the relationships, to get your research in place, to know here are the email addresses, here are the social media handles, yes, I'd like them, yes, I follow them, yes, I introduce myself to them before I need them. So everybody's got that on their to-do list, right? Trying to help both sides out. I'm a matchmaker up here. I just want to feel the love, swim back and forth. Okay. There are press release services like PR Web, Global Newswire, press release programs for local news like Meltwater. If I, as a member of the community, am using services like that to try to reach people on this panel or other local sources, does using that service help me or hurt me?
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant for reaching us
Because?
because we don't look to those.
Yeah.
You know.
Same.
So if I'm using those, count counting on them to get to you, I'm wrong. They won't.
I agree.
Well, if anything ever came to our station from it, I wouldn't know the difference. If the Patty Pilates Fund sent me something and then somebody used that news service, I wouldn't know the difference. I just wouldn't.
So you would prefer they come directly to you than use one of the aggregating PR web type services?
I can't say that for business. I don't know how much somebody pays for something like that, but really it does not make a difference. I'm looking for where did it come from? What is that subject line? If I happen to open it up, no offense, I'm going to want to know within the heading and the first paragraph. And if I don't like it, it's deleted.
I think the point of those newswire services is really more almost like SEO, search engine optimization, and getting the information out there so that people can research it and find it. But it's not an effective way to spur coverage.
Right.
Okay. So if I'm a local person and my target audience is local and I want to reach out to each of my local media, I can just do that directly and I don't have to necessarily
Can't
use
do
one of the
that.
wires.
I mean,
Exactly.
there are.
Okay.
I mean, there are public relations companies like I used to work at. And their job is to, if your budget allows, I don't think it's a bad idea maybe to hire a company that will help you create a public relations release or a campaign that would be there to help you get more coverage that way. I mean, that's how they make their living, right? So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and they typically would do a better job and get more coverage for you than amateurs. That's what they do.
Well, let's hope. They earn their keep then.
Yeah. Whenever I get those, PR Newswire type things, my knee jerks to it's useless, so I hit the delete button usually. But it's like Dianah said, send it to me directly, but tell me in the subject line. You can sell me in the subject line, and then if I open it up, I'm halfway there. And once I open it up, you got about 40 to 50 words to get me the rest of the way. And then after that, attach all you want. Photos, video, everything's great. But really, it's really about the subject line in the very first paragraph of that press release is going to really determine how far we go.
Great. All right, this is a hard one, and then we're going to go to some audience questions. Let's just say that what I represent is something fairly mundane, what most people would consider boring even. Underwater Basket Weavers Association of America. Just randomly, all right? Maybe that's very exciting to two of you in the room. I don't know. Hope I didn't offend anyone. Let's just say that's what it is. And I'm struggling with a way to connect what I do with you and your readers. Any tips on how to make that seem exciting? How to make that seem like something you want to include?
Kind of launch off on that, from that into something.
Sure.
Two things. And I'll speak specifically to Frederick and really local news. A couple of thoughts and tips on that. One is we're probably never going to be interested in that. I'm sorry, but that's okay. There are a lot of different avenues and ways to use what we do to achieve your purposes. We spent an hour now talking about free media, and with free media you get exactly what you pay for. You get free media. So let's not forget there's a whole world of native content and advertising. And if your point is to get people, for most local organizations, local businesses in particular, your primary objective, at least at first, is top of mind awareness, making sure people know about you and think about you when they want your service or product. Right? That's fundamental. And that top of mind awareness can be achieved with advertising, can really be achieved quite well with this whole new emerging area of native advertising or native content, which is a fascinating kind of intermediate, collaborative channel, really. And it can also be achieved through some of the humblest measures and aspects of the newspaper. For example, the Frederick News Post, I couldn't believe it when I came here because I hadn't seen this in 25 years, and now I love it. We have pages and pages and pages of crappy iPhone photos and people handing each other checks and stuff like that, right? I mean, it's like, this is so old school, and I love it because now, if you're here, if you're at a networking event, you know those people, and you look at it and you see them and you think, oh, look at that, so-and-so did that. That's free media. That's, here's a little secret is, learn about the Community at News Post newsmail alias. And that is this wealth of opportunity. We have the calendar. It's free. It's all these little things that build up top of mind awareness, help you establish a relationship with the paper, get your name out there, achieve your business goals. And there's not a story that's ever going to come out of, the fact that a CPA firm added another, desk and expanded their offerings into some obscure aspect of tax law that nobody cares about. We're not going to write about that. But if you take a little picture of somebody moving in, that'll get in. If you put it into the calendar, that'll get in, and you'll build on that. It builds your search engine optimization. It builds your your web presence, and it builds your brand awareness in the community. And there are ads throughout that you can control 100%. And if we're worth enough of your time that you're strategizing on how you can get us to write one story about you, then we're probably worth institutionally your investment in advertising as well. So think about that.
Rick, I wish I placed
Self-interested, but also
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, Rick said, I'm sure that's going to come up during today's conversation, that these folks don't do what they do out of the goodness of their hearts. They all have mortgages and so forth as well. These are paid media. We're focused on how do we leverage what we know and have to get some free coverage, but paid media is good too. And I'm frankly quite surprised that it took this long to come up. So, thank you very much. No, you've all behaved very well.
The inside the TV station way of stories getting on sometimes, and I would assume probably at a radio station, a client talks to a salesperson who is working either to get them to become a client or is a current advertiser, and they say, hey, I've sent this to your news department, would you like to see it? And then that makes its way through the building from the sales side, and it reaches the news department, and it makes something potentially stand out. I mean, that happens. They don't always get on the air, but they get a look. I mean, that's an easier way to get something to at least get looked at.